be baffled as hell about how one person escapes prison. But 7 at the same time? Hey y'all, welcome and or welcome back to my channel. My name is Janae, if you didn't know, and today's video is another true crime episode. So if you're ready, let's go. Alright y'all, so real quick, these the same nails that I done had on for about 2 weeks, and they've been holding on, y'all. They've been going real strong, except for this one. This one broke like 2 days ago. But for the prep work that I did not put into these nails, they doing a good job. Now, of course, I really do need to do them over real bad because my nails done grew out, but that's beside the point. The point is they still here. But other than that, y'all, Merry Christmas. I really cannot believe that the year is almost over. Like, next week is 2024. That's crazy to me. But yeah, y'all, let's go ahead and jump into today's case. So it's Christmas Eve 2000 at an Oshman sporting goods store in Irving, Texas. And the store is set to close at around 6 o'clock. You know, all the stores be closing early on Christmas Eve. And pretty much all of the employees are ready to pack it up and go home and spend the rest of the day and the evening with their families. And at this point, it's about 5:45. So, you know, they good and ready to go. They just got about 15 more minutes before they pack it up, ship it in, and head on out. But it's at around this same time that 2 ADT workers walk into the store. And they go and find the manager, whose name is Wes Ferris, and they tell him that they was there because there have been a string of robberies at other Oshman stores around the area. And they just wanted to make sure that everything was okay. And they had also identified some of the suspects. And they just wanted to see if Wes or any of his employees recognized any of their suspects as customers within the past couple of weeks. And ADT was who Oshman's had their security system through. So this didn't raise any red flags for Wes. So when they handed Wes this paper with a 6-person photo lineup on it, he was more than happy to look over it and have some of his employees look over it as well to see if they might recognize any of these people having been in the store lately. And while Wes was looking down at the paper, one of the men dressed in this ADT uniform pulled out a gun and said, "This is a robbery." And at first Wes was kind of confused, like, okay, what the fuck is happening? And he kind of thought it was a joke. But it was not a joke. It was not a joke at all. And when he looked up from the paper, he noticed that it wasn't just the 2 men who had originally walked into the store. It was now like 3 or 4 other men behind them. And so Wes immediately jumped into action, not like trying to be no superhero or nothing like that, but he instructed all of his employees, like, look, y'all do what these men say. Don't do nothing crazy because I'm trying to get everybody home tonight. And the robbers was kind of on the same thing. They like, listen, y'all do what we say. We ain't gonna hurt nobody. We ain't trying to hurt nobody here. We just need what we need and we gonna be out. So they ended up instructing Wes to gather all of his employees and to put them somewhere, like gather everybody into one room. And Wes decided that the break room would be perfect because everybody could fit in the break room. And so Wes gathered all of his employees and he told everybody to just go to the break room. And once they got into the break room, the robbers ended up tying everybody up, but they left Wes untied. So there was one particular robber who seemed to be the ringleader, and he was instructing the other ones, and he told them to stay in the room with the employees who was all tied up, and he took Wes. And once him and Wes got outside of the break room, he instructed Wes to grab him a duffel bag that was in the store somewhere, and Wes did so, and he instructed him to fill up this duffel bag with money. So Wes does everything that this robber is telling him to do. Like he said, he's trying to go home tonight. He don't want nobody to get hurt. And these robbers said that if they do what he say, ain't nobody gonna get hurt. So Wes fills up this duffel bag with money. They go into the manager's office. He opens the safe, fills the duffel bag up with the money from the safe, and then he's instructed to go to the part of the store where the guns are kept. And while they over there, the robber goes ahead and grabs like 42 guns and a bunch of ammo that go with the guns. And then once all of that was done, once he got the money and the guns, he instructed Wes to go and get the security camera and take it out so that there wouldn't be, you know, video evidence of this robbery. And Wes did exactly that, gave him the footage, and was just really praying they would leave now because they got everything they need. They got the guns, they got the money, and they got the security tape. Like, go ahead about your business now, sir. But the robber had one more request though. He wanted Wes to give him his car keys and tell him which car was his in the parking lot and where it was located. So once he got the keys to Wes's car, he took Wes back to the break room and told all of the employees to stay there for at least an hour. And then he rounded up all his robber friends and they headed on out. But what they didn't know was that At around the same time that they were coming into the store, a lady named Misty was pulling up to the store. And she was coming there to pick up her fiance at the time, Michael, who worked at the Oshmans. And where Misty was sitting at in the parking lot, she could see into the store. And while she was sitting there, she noticed that she saw all of the employees of Oshmans walking in a single file line almost with their hands on each other's shoulders towards the back of the store. And so after she see that, she like, something ain't right. They don't usually do that, because this ain't Misty's first time picking up Michael. So she know that they don't usually just, you know, single file line cha-cha into the break room. And while she's sitting here, she's thinking they getting robbed, but she like, nah, they can't be getting robbed. And she kind of tried to put it out of her mind because she was pregnant, she was emotional, she was due any day now. She kind of felt like she was just Delulu at the moment. But just in case she wasn't, she decided to get out of the car and go to a nearby payphone to call her best friend. Just, you know how you need that reassurance sometimes, like, am I being crazy or not? Like I said, she didn't have a cell phone, so she got out and went to a payphone, and she called her best friend like, girl, I think I'm crazy. I might be going crazy, because I really think this Oshman's where Michael working at is getting robbed right now. And her best friend, she a real one, because she was like, girl, I got you. Don't worry, don't move, go back to your car. I'm on my way. So the best friend pulls up, she get into the car with Misty, and they watching the store. And whatever they saw going on in that store, Misty's friend felt like something was off too. So they ended up calling the police from Misty's friend's cell phone. However, they wasn't able to give a lot of details because all Misty saw was them filing back to the back of the store. She didn't really see too much and nothing else. It was just basically a suspicion at this point. And so while the operator was asking all these questions, Misty like, I don't really know the answer to all of these questions. Just come and see. Just come, please. So the dispatcher radios in a suspicious activity report at the Oshmans, and this was heard by an officer named Aubrey Hawkins. Now, he was on duty that night, but at the time, he was at an Olive Garden that wasn't too far away from the Oshmans with his family for a little Christmas Eve dinner. Now, like I said, he was on duty, but he had a dinner break, and so he decided that whatever little time he was able to spend with his family for Christmas Eve, even while he was at work, he was going to do. And so that's what he was doing when this call came out. And he hugged and kissed his wife, kissed his little son, and told his mama he would see them all a little bit later because he had to go answer this call. So as Officer Hawkins is pulling up to the backside of this Oshman's, the robbers are coming out of the Oshmans. And like I said, this call came in as a suspicious activity call. So Officer Hawkins is not prepared for the ambush that he is about to run into. And as soon as the robbers see Officer Hawkins, they open fire on him. And he ends up being hit 11 times. Now, back inside the break room, Wes and all the employees, they're hearing these gunshots. They don't know who's shooting. They don't know who getting shot at. They know absolutely nothing. All they know is that they hear a lot of gunfire. And a couple of minutes after the gunfire stops, Wes knows that he cannot just sit here for no hour and wait, especially after hearing all of that. So Wes gets up, he calls 911. And he tells them, like, look, I'm the manager at Oshman's. We just got robbed. I just heard some gunshots, a lot of gunshots. Y'all might want to get some people down here. Because remember, Wes right now, he doesn't know that the police have already been called. He does not know that Officer Hawkins is outside. And Wes also relates to the dispatcher that he don't know if the robbers left or not. And so because of this, the police had to get the SWAT team involved because this could potentially be a hostage situation. There could still potentially be armed people in the building, even if they wasn't taking them as hostages. Like, they didn't know the situation or the circumstances, and so they had to get SWAT involved. But prior to SWAT showing up, other officers show up as well. And so they also head over there before SWAT. Now, they're not going to make entrance into the Oshmans. They're going to wait for SWAT for that. But they will get in place and do whatever they need to do before SWAT arrives. And as they pull up, they see Officer Hawkins' police vehicle, and they see Officer Hawkins laying on the ground near his police cruiser. And they know that he's hurt pretty badly. And at this point, Officer Hawkins is still alive. However, he is unconscious, and it's not looking good for him. And so they hurry up and get him transported to the hospital right away. Unfortunately, though, he does not end up surviving his wounds. And once Officer Hawkins passed away, this now went from an armed robbery to a capital murder case. So the SWAT team shows up now, and they make entry into the Oshmans and find that the robbers have gone. They long gone. So they gather up all the employees, and while they are very traumatized by this whole situation, they do need to get them down to the police station for questioning. They need to get as much information from them as possible so that they can catch whoever did this. And Wes lets the police officers know that more than likely they'll be looking for his car, which is a white 1996 Ford Explorer, and he gives them his license plate number. So they put this information out on the news, and they ended up getting a tip that same night, and they found the car abandoned in an apartment complex parking lot. And upon further inspection of the vehicle, they found that Officer Hawkins probably got a couple shots off, because there was a lot of blood in the driver's side seat. And so they figured that at least one of the robbers had to have been injured. And so as they're going through all the details that they know so far and trying to figure out what happened, detectives get a call from their sergeant saying this could potentially be the work of 7 escapees from a South Texas prison. And the detective has no idea what he's talking about. So it turns out that on December 13th of that year, 7 men escaped from a South Texas prison. Now, I'd really be baffled as hell about how one person escapes prison, but 7 at the same time from the same spot? Anyway, so the 7 men who escaped from the prison were Joseph Garcia, who was serving his sentence for murder, Randy Halpern, who was serving his sentence for the abuse of a child, Larry Harper, who was serving his sentence for aggravated SA, Patrick Murphy Jr., who was also serving a sentence for aggravated SA, Donald Newberry, who was in there for aggravated robbery, George Rivas Jr., who was serving a sentence for robbery, and Michael Rodriguez, who was serving his sentence for a capital murder. All 7 of these men came up with this elaborate plan and escaped prison. So what they did was tied up a couple maintenance workers, at least 4 corrections officers, and 3 inmates who had nothing to do with this escape plan at all. And they basically stole some keys, some work uniforms, and the prison inmate uniforms, and then shoved all of these people into a utility closet, locked it, and then at around lunchtime, they just left. So a couple of them dressed up like the maintenance workers, and they left as if they were just leaving the facility for the day. And then 3 of them dressed up like corrections officers, and then 2 of them dressed up, as themselves, I guess, as inmates. And the ones dressed up as the officers were moving the inmates, I guess. Girl, I don't know. But that's how they got out. And honestly, it really just sounds like the stuff that movies are made of. It's crazy. Like, they really tied these people up and put them in a maintenance closet. This really gives like a movie. So after they made their great escape, they robbed a Radio Shack in Pearland, which is a small little subsection of Houston. But the money that they got from the Radio Shack robbery wasn't going to be enough for them to live off of for any amount of time, for real, for real. That was just enough to get them some gas, some food, maybe a hotel, some motels for the couple of nights. It wasn't nothing major, right? So they needed to rob something else. So that's when they decided to make this plan to rob the Oshmans. And during that robbery, I told y'all they made away with 42 guns, but all the cash that was collected from the safe and the cash registers, they collected about $70,000 that night, which would be $10,000 split between the 7 of them. And usually when a lot of people robbing somewhere, they get this certain amount of money and it be like $200 once it's split 7 ways. To get $10,000 each, it wasn't worth it. It was not worth it. But I'm just saying. And according to them, nobody was supposed to get hurt. It just so happened that when Officer Hawkins was pulling up, they were leaving and they just wasn't going back to jail. So they decided to shoot. So now that they believe that this is the work of the Texas 7, which is what they were dubbed once they escaped, the detectives wanted to be sure. So they got the employees who were still there, because mind you, this is still all happening on Christmas Eve. This is still that night. It's like 10 o'clock at night now. And they present a 15-person photo lineup to each individual employee who was in the store that night. And one by one, each of them started identifying each of the Texas 7, or at least some of the Texas 7, as one of the ones who robbed them. And so now that it's confirmed that this is the work of the Texas 7, the police put out an APB for all 7 suspects. And December 26th rolls around, and detectives end up getting a tip from Arlington, Texas. And this is from a hotel clerk who says 3 men who, at least 2 of them, appear to be a part of the Texas 7, have just checked into this hotel. Get down here now. So they go to Arlington, Texas, and they show this front desk clerk a photo lineup, and she points out that 2 of them for sure are a part of the Texas 7. The third one she can't be 100% sure, but 2 she knows for sure. So they do the whole 9. They get the SWAT and everything. They're knocking on people's doors, getting them out of their rooms quietly, trying to make sure all of the other civilians are safe in order to apprehend these fugitives. So they ended up busting down the door. I don't know if they really bust down the door, but that's just what I imagine. So they ended up busting down the door, and apprehending these 3 men. Turns out they were just businessmen. They were just 3 businessmen minding their damn business, not a part of the Texas 7. And that was pretty devastating for them because they really thought that they had at least captured 2 of the 3 men for sure, and thought that they would be able to apprehend the other 5 fairly quickly after at least capturing 2, but that wasn't going to be the case. So then they end up getting the analysis back from the blood that was found in Wes's car, and it came back to 2 different profiles, but neither one of those profiles was Officer Hawkins. And so they know that the perpetrators had at least been wounded severely. And so because they know for sure that at least one of the perpetrators was hurt, they start calling around hospitals trying to see if any one of the Texas 7 had checked in that night with a gunshot wound, but there was no luck. Nobody matching the description of none of the Texas 7 came in with a gunshot wound that night or anytime after. And unfortunately, they will end up following multiple other leads, but all of them led nowhere. So now while they thought they was about to be able to solve this like that wasn't happening for them, and weeks would go by. And in those 4 weeks, there have been no robberies reported, there have been no sightings, no more shootings, like nothing. And so they decided to reach out to America's Most Wanted. And on January 20th, 2001, they ended up doing a full episode that was dedicated to the escapees and the murder of Officer Hawkins. And the day after it aired, they ended up getting a tip. And this tip came from a woman who lived in an RV park in Woodland Park, Colorado. And this lady said after she saw the episode, she realized that some of the fugitives in that episode looked like the little Christian missionaries down the road who just moved in. And just to make sure that she was sure, she ended up going to the RV manager and saying, hey, is them Christian missionaries the same people who I just saw on America's Most Wanted last night? And so he pulled it up on his computer and he was like, oh shit, them is these fugitives. Like, we got to get them the fuck on. And so that's when they ended up calling in the tip. So now the FBI and the Colorado SWAT team surround the RV park, but they real low key about it though. They don't want the fugitives to know that they there. So what they do is they ended up just setting up shop around the RV park and waiting for the fugitives to come out the house or their RV. And on the morning of January 22nd, 3 of the men walk out of their RV and get into a Jeep. And then they drive down the road to a gas station with the SWAT team following them, of course. But not the whole SWAT team though. They still had some officers and some SWAT set up around the perimeter of the RV park because only 3 of them had came out. There was 7 people. So they didn't want to all follow them to the gas station, leaving the rest of the men in the RV park to get away. Like, nah, that wasn't happening. So as soon as these 3 men pull up to the gas station and get out the car, they get taken down by SWAT and they're all arrested without a fight. And the 3 men were George Rivas, Joseph Garcia, and Michael Rodriguez. So after all 3 of them are in custody, they go ahead and search the Jeep that they was in. And when they search this Jeep, they find hella guns. And I mean, like, I told y'all, they robbed the place for 42 guns. So it was a lot of guns in this truck. And one of the guns was actually Officer Hawkins' service weapon. So now back at the RV park, the rest of the SWAT team lets their presence be known. They surround the RV and they announce themselves. And upon announcing themselves, Randy Harpland comes out. He comes out immediately and he tells them that the only person left up in there is Larry Harper. And he said that the other 2, Patrick Murphy and Donald Newberry, had went to Colorado Springs the day prior to get some car parts or some stuff for the car. They went to Colorado Springs for something, but they wasn't in the park. They wasn't in the RV. It was just Larry. But Larry wasn't coming out. Larry didn't want to come out. Larry didn't want to talk to the police. He was not giving himself up to the SWAT team. There was none of that for Larry. And eventually, after some time, the SWAT team ended up hearing 1 gunshot. And then about 30 seconds later, they heard a second gunshot and then complete silence. So they made their way into the RV, cautiously of course, and found Larry to be deceased from two self-inflicted gunshot wounds to the chest. And they also found his exit letter to his parents in the bathroom. And once they get these 5 men apprehended, they find out that the night of the murder, that George Rivas was the one who got shot. He actually got shot in the stomach, but he did not go to the hospital. Instead, they decided to go to a Walgreens. They got some gauze, probably some Band-Aids, some alcohol, some peroxide, anything that they could think of to heal up his wound. They bought it and apparently it worked. And so that's why they didn't get no leads when they called the hospitals. But like I said, they've only captured 5 of the fugitives so far. They still need to get Patrick and Donald. Luckily, they would get a tip about the hotel that they were staying at in Colorado Springs. But they had to be cautious because y'all know how this went last time when they got a tip about them being at a hotel. So they approached this very cautiously, but luckily this time the tip was valid. Now they did end up having a 4-hour standoff, but eventually Patrick and Donald ended up surrendering peacefully after their demands were met. And pretty much the only demand was that they get to speak to the media. So the negotiator was like, oh, if that's all y'all want is to speak to the media, no problem, I got you. And so once they spoke to the media and complained about the prison system, they surrendered. So finally, all 7 men were captured and they were all charged with capital murder, which made them all eligible for the death penalty. And for some odd reason, they all decided to go to trial and try their luck. And they were all found guilty and they were all sentenced to death. And so far, as of 2023, 4 of the remaining 6 have already been executed. The 2 that are still awaiting their execution are Randy and Patrick. And I'm not too sure if they have a scheduled execution date or not. And I mean, was it really worth it though? And I get it that nobody was supposed to die. However, Officer Hawkins lost his life. He was a loving father to his 9-year-old son, Andrew. He was an amazing husband to his wife, Lori. And he was an officer of the law who absolutely loved his job. And he's gone because some idiots didn't want to go back to prison when they could have not done what they did to be in prison in the first place. I'm just saying. Anyways, y'all, that is all I have for today's video. Thank you all so very much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one. So they ended up instructing Wes to and so she called her best friend. Well, no, she don't. Hold on. And her best friend, she a real one. She didn't be like, no, girl, what? They'll be looking for his car, which is a white Ford Explorer, 1990, what year? So it turns out that on December 7th in the year 2000, I hate saying that, like December 7th, 2000, like it don't sound right. Anyways, so it turns out on December 13th of that same, no, yes, okay. Now I really be baffled at how one person is safe, they just left. So a couple of them dressed it up. And I guess they did this to get some money because, well, obviously, duh. And unfortunately, they will follow multiple more leads, multiple, can't even say multiple at this point, geez. That was dedicated to, and this tip came from Utah, Colorado. And this tip came from a woman who lived in an RV park in Woodland County, So now the FBI and the Colorado SWAT team surround the RV park, but they do it conspicuously. Are they inconspicuous or very conspicuous? And these 3 men was George Reeves. No. Yeah, it is. They still have to find Patrick and